Hi, everybody, and welcome to Metaphysical Insights. I am very pleased to have as my guest today Eleanor Wagner. Eleanor is in a part of the country I love. She's up in New England, and these, for the U.S., very old villages and towns going back hundreds of years. And we're going to have a nice conversation about her organization and what she does and how it got started. And we invite all of you to come in with your comments and questions. I can play magic. My friend Vivian says I'm Merlin the magician or a wizard. And so I have the power to bring those up and we can um, answer them to the best of our ability. And we'll have links later on. You can share this with friends and such too. So, Eleanor, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello, Jason. How's
He's
everybody doing?
Yeah, he's a good guy. He just helped me with a big project, gallery reading that was part fundraiser for an organization too. So
So
yeah.
nice.
Now let me um, find out a little bit more for our audience because I I know you do a lot and you're known more on the East Coast, but I'd like to get the people here more information about you. And I have a lot of people overseas that watch. And how did you get involved and what's your organization? What do you guys go out and do?
Okay, well, I'm actually first and foremost an author, and I actually live in Sussex County, which is in northern New Jersey, up at High Point State Park.
Right.
And I'm born and bred in New York, in the Bronx. So having moved from the Bronx to the country was a big adjustment, but I did take summers in Pennsylvania, and my husband did as well. So we knew that we wanted to raise our children in the country, and that's how we ended up here. And
Right.
I've seen spirits since I was a kid, but was afraid and not really nurtured in the arena. And so didn't really know exactly what gifts I had and what I was supposed to do with it. But I was
Hmm.
always fascinated by ghosts and loved to write ghost stories. And I've been writing since the seventh grade. So I wrote a book, and it was a psychological thriller. Put it in the closet, put it away, had children, raised them, took the book out of the closet when a high school friend of mine said to me, send it to my publisher. And that's how my life actually started in this field,
Okay.
because I had written that psychological thriller and I was in the midst of writing a second one when I was in a writing class and people were throwing ideas around. And the idea to write a true account haunting book came to mind. Now, in New Jersey, my favorite part of New Jersey is Cape May, New Jersey. It's like stepping back into an old Victorian town. The houses are just gorgeous, and the next one's prettier than the next one, and that's prettier than the next one than that. And they're all
Uh,
haunted, and they're horse and buggy carriages, and it's just my favorite place to go.
Excellent.
And every time I go there, I go to the bookstore and I buy the latest book on current hauntings. And I
Okay.
thought, well, I'm buying a book in Cape May, even I don't live there. And I know Sussex County is haunted because I owned an antique shop that was haunted. Maybe people would be interested in hearing about true account hauntings in the community where I live.
Hmm.
So I put it out on social media, asking anybody if they wanted to share their story with me. It might end up in one of my books. And my phone did not stop dinging for weeks, William, weeks. So I
Excellent.
started compiling folders because I was getting stories for Sussex County where I live, but then I was also getting stories from people from surrounding counties like Passaic County, Morris County, Pike County. And I thought, well, I'm going to collect these stories because they may end up being in a book. So that's how all of that started. And then, ironically enough, I was getting people sending me stories about Bigfoot in my area and UFOs in my area. So I thought, well, how am I going to put that in a ghostly book?
Hmm.
So I called it Sussex County Hauntings and Other Strange Phenomena. Here's the cover actually. And I
Oh,
put
good.
the other strange phenomena in so that I could put the stories about Bigfoot and UFO into the book because they were such good stories.
I
And
love
I
it.
thought it was going to only be I thought it was going to be only one book, but
Hmm.
people just kept coming at me with more stories and the readers wanted more books. So I set myself to doing more books in the different counties. But then people were reaching out to me and saying, "Can you bring your paranormal team to our business or a home and maybe tell us what's going on?" But actually, the first place that did that was the Ogdensburg Mines. It's called the Sterling um, Mines in Ogdensburg, New Jersey. And I was
Okay.
like dying to get into the mines. Who wouldn't want to go into the mines for a paranormal investigation?
And I
So
think
I
I've
was like,
heard of the
oh,
Sterling
let's.
mines.
They've been on television since a lot. They've had
Okay.
them on different shows. But I was dying to get in there, and I think I was probably the second person that was ever in there for a paranormal investigation.
Wow.
Jumped at the chance and I said, "Yeah, I'll bring my paranormal team in." But I didn't have a paranormal team. So I had to kind of like scramble around to put one together. And at the time, I had interviewed probably like 100 people for that first book. And there were about 5 women that I had really connected with at the time. And I said, "Well, let me ask them if they want to come." I mean, I know they don't know me from Adam, but they might want to go
Mhm.
on an adventure. We're all women over 50. Heck, we'll start a new thing.
Right.
And so I asked them, and 3 of them took me up on it and came. And then there was a paranormal group that I had worked with on another investigation. I reached out to a few of them, and 2 of them came. So we had a small group to go into the mines for an investigation, and that was the very first investigation. I did it on my birthday weekend too. It was actually my birthday. I figured it was a
Wow.
happy birthday to me going on this investigation.
That's a
And
great birthday
we had
present.
such great yeah, we had such great stuff happen too. It was just very, very active. In fact, we all had our cell phone cameras going at the same time, and we were spread around,
Hmm.
and we had this interactive misty smoke that it was communicating with us, and we got it on camera.
Wow.
And at the end of the night, they everybody gave me their footage, and I picked what I thought was the best visual footage from that particular incident, and I sent it into Paranormal Caught on Camera, which is a television program, and
Hmm.
they liked it so much they did a feature on us for one
Wow.
of their shows. So that was our like 15 minutes of fame.
What a way to start
But
out.
yeah, right.
Uh-huh.
So that was really how the paranormal investigating started. People were inviting us into their homes and businesses. And then, of course, I would go looking for investigations too. If it was an old building, I'd go in, "Ooh, can I bring my paranormal group in for an investigation? It doesn't cost you anything. We'll just come."
Right.
And so before I knew it, we were doing all these different investigations in different places. And we were called Lady Ghostbusters for the duration, but then I started collecting men along the way.
Okay.
I had one man that started with us, and he really didn't care that he was part of the Lady Ghostbuster team. He was a paranormal investigator with the Lady Ghostbusters. But
Mhm.
now we have equal men and women, and so we renamed our group the New Jersey Spirit Hunters about 6 or 7 months ago. So I
I
always
like the
say New
name.
Jersey Spirit Hunters, formerly the Lady Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that name too. It gives you a lot of flexibility in what you work with as far as fitting
Yeah.
under the mission of the name. Oh,
Yes.
that's a fascinating story. Now, how many books do you have out?
I have 6. The Sussex County Hauntings one that I just showed you
Hmm.
is the first of 3 because I didn't think it was going to be more than one book, but I had the opportunity to make 3 books in Sussex County so far. And then I wrote Warren County Hauntings, which is a county that's right next to Sussex County. I had so many stories that were wonderful that I wanted to write about. So then I wrote that book. And the first book I told you earlier that I wrote was a psychological thriller.
Right.
That's this one, Dream a Little Dream,
Okay.
and that takes place in Sussex County. So it's got a lot of familiar places that people would recognize who live around here. And then
Right.
I released my first children's book in December called Janine Bean Meets Mavis the Camel. Would you believe it, William? I went to school to write for children. So you would think that would have been the first thing that I wrote, but it wasn't. So I
Oh, I
had to
love
write a
it.
children's book, and it was done. And I've got 6 more books in the series. But the hardest part is getting somebody to do the illustrations. To get somebody to do those illustrations, it's just you can't find anybody that wants to commit to a project. It's crazy. So I had a
That's
hard time
awesome.
finding somebody, and I was a young girl. She's in college, and she took on the task, and she did that first book with me. And I'm really hoping that she'll finish the series with me because I really like what she did. So
Excellent.
I'm not pushing, but I'm praying that she will continue doing it with me because I want to get those other ones out.
Now, how do people get a hold of your books?
Author Eleanor
Just a second
or
here.
Amazon. It's there on Amazon. But if they want to get them signed by me, they can go right to my website, author
Because I need to get some of them myself because I haven't read about them. I haven't read them.
Well, you could just tell me, and I mean, you and I talk to one another, and you can just get it directly through me.
Okay, sounds good. Um, no, uh, they sound fascinating, and
Well, you know what I
w-
liked about these books? I took the example, like I said to you, from the Cape May books because they always took pictures of the locations, and I love to look at pictures. So I
mm-hmm,
thought, well, I'm going to do pictures of the locations, but I'm also going to provide evidentiary pictures. So if I have a picture of a ghost in a window, I want to put that in the book. And then I take extra evidence like audio and video and that sort of thing, and I put it on my website. So if people really like what they see in the book, they can go to my website and they can see all the other stuff. But I also like to talk about history. You and I spoke about this because you're a historian yourself.
right.
And I'm all about historical preservation and wanting to teach people the history of the counties that I'm writing about because I just feel like history gets lost in the shuffle and people really don't learn much about it anymore. So if I can give that piece of it along with the haunting tale, then it just adds more of an interest because they're introduced to the place, especially the building. If I have a history of the building itself, if it was,
Mm-hmm.
let's just say, if it was an old church or if it was an old captain's house, for example, is one of the stories in the first book. People are intrigued by that. Who was that captain? What was his family like? And so they see the building, they learn the history of it, and then I tell them the hauntings that have gone on over the years, but they're stories that people told me. So they're coming out of the mouths of people who experienced whatever it was that happened there. And that makes it more interesting to the reader because they know that they're people just like you and I who
Right.
happen to be in this place when something happened. And some people are sensitive like you and I, but then there are
Mm-hmm.
other people that are not, that who were once skeptics. And then when they experience something, it's like, oh my goodness, it really happened. I was there and now I'm a believer. And that to me is the best when somebody is
Well, and those people
turned.
are often too skeptical enough that they really look to see what it could be other than a ghost.
Right.
Because when they don't believe so much, they really look hard. So it makes it almost more credible than somebody that wants everything to be a ghost.
Very true.
I'm sorry, it's a
And
steam
then
coming on.
when you try to debunk something, it's good because you want people to try and debunk it because when they
Exactly.
can't and they have no other explanation, then they have to say, it's something that I can't explain.
Right. Oh, yes, I like it. And the idea with history, you can't have history without ghosts, and you don't have ghosts without history. Um,
Exactly.
I did ghost tours for a gentleman out here, Rocky Smith, and his line has always been, it's not that these places are haunted, it's where history is repeating itself.
Mm,
And um,
that's a good way
there's
of describing it.
there's a lot of
The
truth to that.
residual hauntings, the stuff that just plays over and over and over again. Yeah.
A lot of it's that, or even if it's an active interactive type of a thing, it's still reliving some of that history. It's the characters, it's the people that are were there, and it's not their trapped souls. I think you and I have talked about some of this before, but
Mm-hmm.
um, it's not they're stuck. That it's part of who we leave, what we leave behind, or people that visit, or whatever. But um, they don't need they don't need rescuing and such, in my opinion. Um,
Yeah, you've explained that to me, and you've actually given me food for thought because um, I was always under the assumption that they they did. Some
mhm,
of them were stuck. So it is interesting to hear you say that you feel that they're not.
yeah, and I'm not going to say that I'm right and other people who don't agree with me are wrong.
Sure.
We can't prove anything in this field really, um, which is both frustrating and interesting. But just so many pieces of it, and they it's easy for us to categorize everything according to the boxes that we're taught. And even if we're not from a religious family or religious background, we live in a society that puts a lot of that into us, not necessarily, it's more in a secular way, but still the idea of souls and getting stuck or not. I mean, there's just a difference in how I think we tend to look at things that's very difficult to break. Um, I work hard to make sure that I'm getting from them what they are and who they are, not a preconceived concept of what they're supposed to be because I've read it someplace, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and
I
it
think you froze.
it works for me. I mean, it fits what I see. So,
You
yeah.
froze up there for a second, but I got you back.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah,
No, that's all right. It's not your fault. I told you about the thunderstorm I have coming through over here, and it
right.
kicks out my internet sometimes. So I kind of try and pick up where we left off from when you do come back. It's like, okay, wait a second, let me find my place.
Uh, yeah. Oh, geez. I love all of the technology and how easy it makes to do this, but at the
To
same
bring
time,
people together. I mean, like
mhm,
you, as far away as you are from me, being able to talk to you, even the people that are overseas, I find that really neat. Like when I was a kid growing up in the Bronx, my family that was in Europe, we would write each other letters,
right,
and I would write them in German and they would try and write them in English. So this way we could at least communicate, because to have a telephone conversation was in the middle of the night and you had to call you. We had to wake up early in the morning, like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, to make a call to Europe to talk to relatives. And you literally would talk to them, if you were lucky, 10 minutes, and that was already an astronomical fee to pay for the phone call because it was that
right.
expensive. Now we have this power of modern technology where it doesn't cost anything. You could just get on FaceTime or Zoom or a platform of that sort and see your relatives and talk to
Hmm.
them in person. So I'm tickled pink when we can reach my husband's relatives in Hungary or my cousins in Austria and actually see them and speak to them. So
Yeah,
it's a treat to be able to do all of this stuff.
it is. Now, what part of Hungary are his relatives in?
Oh, let me think of St. Peterfa.
St. Peter's in
No,
Hungary?
it's Peterfa. It's Peterfa.
Okay. I don't know where that is. Is that east, west,
Don't
north?
ask me. I have no clue.
I was just one of my best friends is Hungarian and lives in Hungary, and
Oh, okay.
I spent a month visiting, and I've been back shortly another time. But so I got to travel a bit, but so I was just
My
wondering if it was
husband's
an
my
area.
husband's been a couple of my husband's been there a couple of times, and we sent our daughters when one daughter graduated from high school the same year that my older daughter graduated from college. So we sent them to Europe to go visit the family, and they went to Vienna. They stayed in their cousin's flat in Vienna and took the sights in the city. And then my cousins brought them to my parents' homes that they grew up in, so they got to see where their grandparents were born and raised in the actual houses too. And then they
Oh,
visited a castle or two, and then they went to Hungary. They went right over to the border, and all they said was, "We're looking for the Wagners." "Oh, you're a Wagner? Come on in!" And they just took them off over the border to the first bar, and they walked into the bar, and they said, "We're looking for." "Let's see Wagner," and he raised his hand, and "That's me." He was right there in the bar in the middle of the daytime.
I
And
love
then
it.
he took them to their family home. It was just crazy, but
Uh, that's fantastic.
yeah, they had
Yeah.
it was a vacation of a lifetime for them. They really had a blast. They actually went to go visit the same areas that The Sound of Music was made in Austria, because that was a film that the children watched when they were kids, and when they were in choir, I made them sing because I was in charge of children's choir. So I made them sing some of the songs from the movie, and they ended up winning the talent show that year with that song. So going to Austria, they had to go to see where Sound of Music was filmed. So
Right.
that was one of the we have to do that kind of thing. So yeah,
So they were.
that, and I would like to go and visit too. The last time I was in Austria, I was 4, so I don't remember anything.
You
And
need to go back.
glimpses of glimpses of like my grandpa. I remember grandpa. I remember my grandmother. Just very very little thoughts that I have because I was so young. But
Hmm.
I want to go back when my husband and I retire, just to see for myself
It's
what
a
I missed.
beautiful country, and your kids were probably around the Salzburg area because
They did go
that's
to Salzburg. Yeah.
because the I know it was just out of Salzburg that that opening scene was filmed and all of
They
that for the movie.
it was a bus ride they had to take to get to Salzburg, because
Right.
where my cousin Vienna, they stayed in the flat in Vienna, and then my dad was from a place called Gerresdorf, which is a really small town, and
Mhm.
my mom was from a place called Scharlendorf, which is also a very small town, but not too far from Güssing, if I remember that correctly.
Okay.
And so every time they wanted to go to visit a place, they'd hop on a bus ride, and I think Salzburg was about 3 hour ride
Okay.
for them to go visit.
Yeah.
But they just took advantage of the opportunity and went wherever they could. So
Good for them.
yeah,
Yeah. I had to wait a little longer before I got overseas, so um, it was amazing. Uh, and Salzburg is beautiful. It's also you get close to there some of the best Celtic museums and such because a lot of the beginning of the Celts was actually in that area as well.
hmm
And so it's nice. And the train trip from Salzburg to Vienna is beautiful.
I heard that it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I would love to just be able to visit the castles like you were talking about earlier. I
Hmm.
remember I remember visiting a castle when I was 4, but I don't remember much, you see. So
Well,
that's one of the things I would really like to do. I'd like to visit the castles over there. I'd like to visit Ireland. I'd like to visit Scotland. So I've got a bucket list I got to get started on soon. So
yeah, it's important. And these places are amazing. The people are wonderful. Um, I've been fortunate. I've gotten to travel a bit in the last several years. Hopefully, I can make that happen again. Right now, it's all on hold. But um, I love being overseas, and
mm,
it you there's so much that we just don't have here. Even
mm,
where you are, where you've got the early days of European settlement in the continent. Um, there's there's something about being in a building that's been lived in or used, occupied for 1,200 years or 1,000 years,
I
um,
can imagine. Yeah.
and it's and then I'm the Neolithic and Mesolithic. I'm a big fan of, so get me involved in those places, and
And
you
you're
know, I'm
hooked, huh?
I'm home. Yeah,
Wow.
it's like, what do
Hmm.
you mean we have to leave now? No, we don't. I'm not ready yet. Uh,
Yeah.
oh, geez. Now, with the Bigfoot UFO and such, there is a theory that um, the events kind of go together. A lot of times, that areas that have a
Yeah.
lot of Bigfoot activity have UFO activity and maybe ghosts.
One
So,
corresponds with the other. I actually talked about that in the first book because we had a crash of a UFO in Lake Owassa, which is in Sussex County, and it was on the farm of a family. And for years, the young man who, when he grew into adulthood, was telling his story. He wanted people to believe what happened to his family on that night. Um, but the government had said that they had to be quiet about it, and he said, "No one's going to shut me up," and he just talked about it for years and years and years. And then his niece took over his story when he passed away, and she wrote about it. Said, "This is what my uncle went to his death talking about what happened on their farm." But
wow.
ironically enough, right after that incident, they started seeing Bigfoot in this area. So people were saying one corresponded with the other. Did Bigfoot come down on the spaceship that crashed and never left? So I have heard that before, but that's definitely a story that is going around here in Sussex County in relation to one with the other.
Okay. Now that's a different twist on it than I've heard before, too. That's interesting. I like it. Um, I mean, just as
I
an
know that there's a
interesting,
whole bunch of different things too. People
yeah.
thinking that they're interdimensional, coming from a different dimension, and that's how I had a friend of mine. He grew up on a farm in Sussex County, and he had interaction with a Bigfoot in his on the land that they grew up on.
Okay.
And to this day, he feels like he's being kind of tagged or tracked by Bigfoot. I don't know if it's necessarily the same one or the Bigfoot family, but he's not only had those incidences with Bigfoot that he was as a child with his parents and his brother. As an adult,
Uh-huh.
he's had incidences with his wife and his two daughters and Bigfoot. And then they've had sightings of it and have gotten it on camera. And he said the strangest thing with that instance when they were driving on 206, which is kind of like a desolate road at night, but during the
Okay.
day you got cars going back and forth. And it was
Mhm.
during the day that they were driving in the direction, and his wife hollers for him to stop, pull over the car. There's a Bigfoot in the field walking. And so they pull over the car, and all four of them, his two daughters, he and his wife, get out of the car, and they're watching this Bigfoot walk across the field. And so
Wow.
he was snapping pictures away. And he said, Eleanor, he said, the strangest thing was none of the other cars that were driving around stopped and took pictures or noticed anything. So I thought to myself, was were they so involved in what they were doing, or like in on phones and social media or whatever, that they didn't notice, or were they made to not notice? I mean, it makes you wonder why. Because I know when I'm in the passenger seat of my car, yeah, when my husband's driving, I might be working on a story, or I might be updating things on my phone. But a lot of the times I like to take in the scenery around me. So while
Right.
he's driving, I'll be looking at the sights, unless it's just highway and then I'm disinterested. But if I'm in a really lovely area with trees and farmland, I like to soak it up. And
Right.
I can't imagine, like, they just get out of their car and they're standing on the side of the road watching this thing in the field. and nobody else picks up on it. Nobody else sees it, which
It's interesting.
has been known to happen. People usually would notice it, and a lot of people would pull over and go, "Oh my God, look at that!" and start taking pictures. Like when you see a UFO in those instances, that people see it and they pull over and they take pictures. So I thought it was very strange how he felt like he was being almost, I don't want to say targeted or tagged or tracked over the years. And I don't know if it was the same one, but he's had so many incidences with Bigfoot that it seems a bit strange, and it makes sense when he says that he feels like he's being watched by it.
I wonder if it's watched or if it's they trust him enough and so let him see them.
I don't know
Um,
because he's terrified of it. He's
okay.
terrified of it, which I've spoken to several people who have had their own instances, and some of them welcome it and would like to see it again. And maybe because he was so young when he had his first experience with it, but probably, I think I want to say it was about a year ago, he and his family were camping and they have like one of those little pop ups, I guess you would call it.
Hmm.
And he said, and I understand why he would be terrified still, this thing or took their pop up with them in it and shook it, for quite some time. That when he finally got out with the gun to try and chase after whatever it was gone. So I guess I could understand why he would feel like it's after him, or if he was afraid of it. I get that.
Yeah, that's a different story that I don't
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know.
wow. Yeah, I could certainly see that as being frightening. Um, I definitely, I'll start with the first book, but I want to order it from you. Um,
Thank you.
oh, you're welcome. Thank you. I'm just trying to think. I I haven't come to a conclusion on my own as to whether or not I think UFO and Bigfoot are linked, or if they just happen to be in areas that
At the
both
same
are
time,
seen.
yeah, I haven't come to any kind of decision myself either. I don't know. And I like to be open minded too as to the existence as well,
Right.
because there's nothing that's sure. There's nothing
Exactly.
definitive, but I like to be open minded and think that there is a possibility, especially since now, like, I had these people are my friends that have told me these stories that live in this area. Like, I have another friend of mine. She asked that I change her name when I wrote her story in the book. So I've changed her name in the book. But as early as 2019, I believe it was,
Okay.
she has a cabin that she rents out as like an Airbnb on the mountain. And
Hmm.
she was going there late at night to drop off the key because guests were arriving. I think they were going to get there like at 11 p.m. and she was going to drop off the key at 10 p.m. So it was there when they arrived. And as she's backing out of the car, she was talking to her boyfriend on the phone. And all of a sudden, she hears the loudest, scariest scream that she's ever heard that wasn't human. And she was like, "Oh my gosh, what was that?" And the boyfriend said, "What the heck was that?" And she goes, "You heard that?" And he goes, "Yeah." She goes, "I don't know what it was, but I'm getting out of here." So she pulls out the driveway and she starts going down the mountain. And she's heading down the mountain to go over this little road called Bassett's Bridge Road, which is kind of like a linkage road. It's a very short road that goes over a swampland, but it takes you
Okay.
from one side of town to the other side of town, which she lived on. So as she's going on this little linkage road, she sees this enormous hairy figure come walk over the guardrail. Now you're talking, the swamp is down here, and then the guardrail. So if you were a human, you would have to like trudge up at this end and climb over the guardrail to get onto the road. She said this thing took it in stride, just stepped over the guardrail and meandered across the road to the other side and took the guardrail as if it was just nothing.
Wow.
And now she's on the phone. She's always on the phone, but she's on the phone with a girlfriend at the time, and she goes, "I think I just saw Bigfoot." And the friend was laughing. You're so full. She goes, "No, I'm not. I'm not joking. I'm serious. This just happened." So the girlfriend goes on Facebook and she's like laughing on Facebook. Ha ha ha. So and so just said she thought she saw Bigfoot in Sussex County. And another mutual friend gets in on the comment and goes, "No way. Where? Tell me exactly where." And so she says, "Over by Bassett's Bridge Road." Now, this woman who wanted to know where was asking because she lived right by there, and they were out in the backyard having a campfire when this thing showed up in their yard, and all the guys jump on their ATVs to go after this. So within the same time frame that she saw this thing cross the road, it was going in the direction of where this woman lived in the yard. So it was not a coincidence that it was the same time frame that they
Right.
said they saw something and the guys went after to try and catch it. And that was as
Wow.
early as 2019. So it makes you wonder, is there something to this? And I believe her. I trust her. I don't think she's making it up.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I do. I do know what you mean. And I had always wanted Bigfoot to be true. But I'm a see it to believe it type guy.
Yeah.
And even though I trust people, I've had several people with experiences that are good friends. I trust that they're not lying. But yeah, well, could they have mistaken something for something else? Could it be a different interpretation? But I saw one myself. And
You did actually see one?
yeah, and
Really?
8 or 9 years later, I still try to figure if it could be something else, but it wasn't. I mean, it was it was what I saw, and we had.
What's your story?
Well, I was with a group. We were in the Cascade Mountains. Actually, what the person who put the group together had lots of experience with Bigfoot, and he's somebody who's lived in the woods and knows his way around and whatever. And so they found a place for us to get to and camp easily. You know, trudging 5 miles with a backpack, but just, park off the Forest Service road. And we were walking down the road, and it was night, but there was ambient light. We weren't using flashlights, and we could see pretty well. And as we were walking down the road, it's a gravel Forest Service road. Um, we get to one area. It's over by a rock quarry, and I look, and then back in the back, it looks like there's something tall walking behind a first row of trees. But the wind was blowing some, and it looked like it was walking the opposite way of the way the trees were moving, but I couldn't be sure. So I said to myself, yeah, this may be something, it may not. But I'm not going to count it as real. But coming back up, there was no wind, and it was walking in front of the tree line and blocking out the trees as it was walking back and forth in front of it. And it was
Hmm.
very tall. Um, it was quiet. Um, we'd had some communication that I had had telepathically with them, but I didn't know for real they existed until I saw it. Um, so I was kind of wondering. Um, but we also had a lot of experience with Faye that night. Thousands and thousands of
Hmm.
little dots of light that were self-illuminating, going down the road and then coming back again. Plus, seeing some of the faces and such in the brush and the bushes, and we were not doing anything. We weren't drinking. We weren't doing drugs. No hallucinogenics. I mean, none of the things that alter consciousness or awareness or could
Mm-hmm.
lead to hallucinations on this. And they said the night before they saw a UFO, but for me, a lot of these are their pinpoints of light that move maybe differently that they're talking about. But I need more than that to say something's a
Mm.
UFO, not in just stars. So I don't know if there was UFO activity or not, but we had fingernails on our tents that sounded like zippers at night. People walking
Mm.
around when nobody was there or nobody was out of their tent. And we could tell there was nobody else. We were on
Hmm.
a one way or a dead end road, and the guy in charge kept track of who came and went during the day because it was huckleberry season. Um, and so, yeah, I can't think of anything else. And the next year, a friend of mine went along with us, and out of nowhere, and this is in the middle of the daylight, he got hit in the middle of the chest with a rock. That just somebody threw a rock at him, and there was nobody in the line of direction that the rock came from that could have thrown it, except
That's
maybe,
known. That's known activity
yeah,
of Bigfoot that they do stuff like that, tree knocking, throwing rocks.
uh huh,
Yeah,
exactly,
very interesting.
yeah,
Getting back to earlier when I said the interdimensional thing
hmm.
was my friend had said that there was no explanation for where the footprints ended. Like when they saw the footprints, they just suddenly disappeared, and that made him wonder whether that dimensional theory made sense or not.
I think it does for the Fae as well as Bigfoot, because I started thinking a long time ago, maybe the Fae are real and they're interdimensional. And then
Hmm.
I've had experiences that have reinforced that that's true. And with the Bigfoot, I've had this experiences communication that said that as well. Now, could I
Hmm.
be wrong? Absolutely. But my understanding is that they are interdimensional,
It would
which
make
is,
sense.
yeah. And I'm just impressed at how easily seen these ones by you were, because usually, I mean, what I've been told basically by them is they don't want proof of their existence because they don't want people going out on ATVs chasing them, or they don't want to be shot or captured and put in zoos, or they don't trust us for good reason. And so
Well,
I-
sure,
I'm
absolutely.
so when they're wandering around so easily spotted, that's amazing to me. Um,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
believe it. Yeah.
I do
Wow.
find it very strange, though, that nobody else noticed enough to stop and pull over but them. So it makes you
Yeah.
wonder whether they had the ability to just key in on them and nobody else. I don't know.
I would think
Makes you
so.
wonder.
Yeah, it does. And I can't imagine why they wouldn't have that. Um, if it's just, if nothing else, a telepathic link kind of that sets off the, oh, look over here feeling. Or,
Hmm.
or maybe these people are just more um, aware. I'm one of these when I'm even,
Receptive or.
yeah, or just and more aware of what's going on around them. Um, I tend
Hmm.
to pay attention out the window when I'm a passenger in a car. Um, I
Mm-hmm.
like to see what's going on around me that way. And
Yeah, me too.
yeah, so these are
Well, that's
fascinating.
cool that you got to see something too. So you were made a believer from seeing it. Well, I'm the same way. If I see something, then I've seen it for myself. And I would love to believe, I love to hear the stories, but until I actually experience it or see it myself, I'm not that much of a believer. But I say
Right.
that to people who come to my book signings too, if they're questioning about spirits and ghosts.
Uh-huh.
And I say to them, I see where you're coming from. You want to be able to see it for yourself in order to believe it. So I get it. I get
Yeah.
why you wouldn't. But I also say to them, I'm not out to prove anything to anybody. And do I really care whether you believe me or not? No, I don't.
Right.
I mean, I'm telling you a story, and it could be a scary story and a fun story to listen to. The only difference is it's a true account story, and whether you believe it or not doesn't really matter to me at all.
Right.
I know what happened. I know what I've experienced. I know what I believe, and I'm just sharing the story with you, you know.
Right. No, exactly. And when I give presentations or whatever as well, or in any of my books, um,
That's what
I'm
I've
very
heard
much
too,
this.
Eric.
Yeah, I'm very much the same kind of mindset that I needed to see it to believe it. I don't
Right.
ex
Mm-hmm.
I don't expect people to believe me just because I say so. Um, I'm not quite that arrogant where I think that the whole world waits with bated breath for my every word on some topic. Um, but it's interesting, and maybe it's just a ploy of the universe to keep us entertained. But
Maybe.
yeah,
Oh, it's doing
but
a
there's
good
something there.
job.
Yeah, it is. And I saw my first ghost when I was 8. The psychic ability, I've seen myself in action to often, and others um, that I trust. I mean, these are all things that I have practical firsthand knowledge of. Otherwise, I wouldn't
Hmm.
believe it. And the Fae, I've seen with, including in the middle of day time, with my own two eyes. And
I have to send a picture to you. I thought about you the other day because um, we had talked about Faye the last time you and I spoke.
right,
And I remembered this reader of mine reached out and sent me some pictures. And it almost looks, I mean, I look at it and I think it's like, but I think leprechaun. It's the strangest thing, but this little being in this man's photograph. He was out with his dogs walking, and he sees a herd of deer. I think you call them herds, right? A herd of deer.
yeah, hmm,
And he loves the deer, so he started snapping pictures. And when he went home, he noticed something strange in the picture. And then when he zoomed in, you see this little like leprechaun guy.
wow,
And he goes, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but it's there. And I look and I see this little bearded guy. So I have to send it to you because he's an elderly gentleman. He's like 86 years old.
okay,
And I think he must be sensitive to spirit and sensitive to these sort of things because he had other pictures of other things that he's had happen to him that he's caught. But that was the one that I was most intrigued by because it's very, very strange. So I have to send it to you for you to look at. But I thought if you went, we talked about Faye the last time. So you'll
right.
have to
No,
tell me what you think of it.
I'd love to
Yeah,
see it. Thank you. Um,
sure.
and I'm not an expert on photography and if things are camera flares or whatever else, but I do
Oh
know a
no, this
couple.
doesn't this doesn't
It is
even
this.
look like camera flare at all. Like I'm going to show you the picture because you're familiar with Faye, what to see whether you think
Yeah,
it's Faye or not. But
yeah,
it's just in the it's probably I want to say it's nearing dusk because it was at the end of the day when he was walking when he took the photo. But there's no glare of anything. It's not like no sun
hmm,
glare or light glare or anything that is explainable. And like I said,
excellent.
the man is like 86 years old and just randomly took the picture. So
Right. I
it
love it.
definitely looks like a strange anomaly, I guess would be the best way to describe it. A
Okay.
strange anomaly.
I love it. Now, was he anywhere around where you live?
He lives in Pennsylvania, and
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure. where in Pennsylvania, because Pennsylvania is huge. I live in northern New Jersey, and to get to Milford, Pennsylvania, it's 25 minutes for me. But he's not near Milford. I think he's further out. But he
Okay.
said, I would love for you to come. I've got these other places for you to see. Oh, he even sent me a picture of a spirit in a window, which was legit too. I could see the ghostly spirit in the window. I'm
Fantastic.
very. That's I think that's what I've noted is like one of my gifts. William, remember when you were telling us that we should try to figure out
Right.
what our strengths are? One of my strengths is being able to catch things on camera and in windows and in mirrors. For some reason, I tend to get ghostly figures in windows and in mirrors, and so I could relate when he showed me that picture of the spirit in the window because I've seen it before. I've gotten my own catches that were
Right.
similar, where you can actually see full-bodied apparitions in the windows of the mirrors.
Right.
So
Oh, that's fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah. Uh, you should you should come to the Port Gamble Ghost Conference. It's in Port Gamble, Washington, the second weekend, I think, first or second weekend in November. And there's a house there called the Walker Ames House, and um, they have a lot of activity, and people have seen figures in the window. And actually, it was in that town that I saw my first. Was it where I saw my first fae? I think it was. Um, where I had my first glimpse of.
experience with that.
Yeah.
April 22nd, I'm doing a presentation with a friend of mine. His name is Richie Michella. He does spirit art. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's
I've heard of it.
he'll get a picture of a person that's trying to make contact with their loved one, or a spirit that's just visiting, and
Hmm.
he's able to draw a picture of that individual, and he's very good at it. He's hit it on the nose for so many different people. So we decided to do this event at one of the
Hmm.
most the oldest buildings in Vernon, New Jersey.
Oh wow.
Uh, and I've done investigations in this building before. I actually worked in the building when it was an ice cream parlor years ago.
Hmm.
And when we did our investigation, we had the light go on and off for us. Like we spoke to Spirit and said, you can turn the light on and off again because it had been happening, but we didn't get it on camera. So now we were focusing the video on and say, could you please do it again? And
Right.
it actually responded to us in kind and did turn the light back on for us, which was very neat. But we found out that night that it was a gentleman that was one of the spirits that was there who was he worked in the mill when it was a mill at one point,
Okay.
and now it's a coffee shop, and he likes the smell of the coffee. So the owner leaves a cup of coffee for him every morning. So when we
Nice.
go there on April 22nd, I'm hoping to reconnect with that spirit again
Oh,
for the
good.
people who are attending the event, so that
Yeah.
they're there to have their first experience with an authentic investigation. So I really hope that they get to experience the same thing that we did that first time we were there.
Let me know how it goes. Um,
I will. I
I
will.
think that's fascinating, and uh, it helps. They call them trigger objects and such, and we've used them um, at train avalanche train sites, using things like a railroad watch or the.
We brought whiskey for the miners and cigarettes, that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, we've used whiskey and cigarettes
Toys for the
for.
children. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yep. Hmm.
And all of those things. And a lot of times, um, a lot of times they they
When she said
respond.
coffee.
Yeah.
Get me mad, Eric, and you'll really hear my Bronx accent.
uh, no, I love it.
Sorry,
Um,
I didn't mean to cut you off, William.
oh no, not at all. It's fun. Um, but oh, anyway, sorry. Every once in a while, the ADHD just totally short circuit out, and I'm in mid word and I can't remember what I was saying. So, no problem.
For me, it's just old age.
Uh, I don't know. I've been this way all my life, so um, but yeah, let me know how that goes because I think that would be
I will.
fascinating. There's so much to explore back there, and my sister used to live um in Maine, down by Kennebunk, and
Oh,
it
Maine.
was
Hmm.
it was so nice to go visit because there were all these ancient places, and I had friends that lived in Marblehead down by Boston, and could go visit
My sister
there and such
lives
too.
in Massachusetts. She has a home in Massachusetts.
Hmm.
But it's very very old over there, so it's
Yes,
anywhere you go, anywhere you travel, you could see it. You could see the age, and you could feel it in the air.
yes.
Very alive, the air.
Hmm. Well, and there is a history, basically, of Fae there too. You've got Rumpelstiltskin stories there, and you have, oh, what was his name that went and played bowling and slept for 20 years or however long? What was his name? Um,
Not ringing a bell.
oh, and it's one I know really well. A lot of these were kind of upstate New York, Adirondack type things. And the Headless
Hmm.
Horseman, and I mean, there's so many
Oh,
different
Sleepy Hollow.
stories.
Sleepy
Yeah,
Hollow.
but there was so many um, um, different Fae related stories up in New England, and um, it just makes sense to me that you've got all these ghosts up there, and some non-human beings as well. I'm sure. I mean, well, the
Yeah,
Fae, but
I forgot what the. There was another word for it. Um, I think I might have said it to you at one point in time. Not Fae, but what the heck is it? And when it was first mentioned to me, it was a being that was tr- disguising itself as a child, but you could tell that it was not a child and that it was not human just by the way it moved and it carried itself. What the
okay.
hell did they call him? Huh?
Well, they would say changelings were if maybe a fae would or a fairy or an elf would translate or substitute their their child or their person with a baby or a child from somebody's house. Um, but I don't think that's what it is. Eric says
The
imp.
name is this. No, it wasn't an imp. It wasn't
Uh-uh.
an imp. Um, oh my goodness, the name is escaping me right now. And I remember when we were standing there, and the two mediums that I was with, the one said, "I believe it's blah blah blah," and I can't remember what it was called. And I'm going like, "What the heck is that?"
Right.
And it's something that was never human. And whatever this being was that was disguising itself as a child that you could tell was not a child was not letting the other spirit in the house communicate with us. There was an elderly man spirit that was trying to communicate with us, and this other being was kind of like controlling the outcome and not letting him speak to us. I wish I could
Okay.
remember what the heck that was called. It's just escaping me at this moment. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. It's got me trying to remember now too. And there are most of, from my understanding, a lot of tribes talk about Pukwudgies or Pudgewuckies. I get the middle mixed up and just exactly the right way the word is pronounced. But they're childlike in size. Um, but and they're hairy. Um, some tribes say that they're just all of them are bad news. Some tribes
Hmm.
say um, they are um, And I don't mean Skinwalker Eric, but uh,
No, not Skinwalker.
mm-mm. But
Now it's going to
they
bug all of us. We're all going to be wondering. We're going to want to remember it. So when I think of the name, I'm going to tell you. You're going to have to put it in the comments or something for the guys so they
okay,
can see
sounds good.
what we were talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Um, but they're a being that actually helped friends of mine explore an abandoned mill.
Oh, really?
Yeah, where I live, we live in the oldest um, incorporated city west of the Mississippi River, and it was a territorial capital. And until the mills closed a few years ago, we had the longest continually operating industrial site in the state.
Hmm.
And the mills closed, and this friend of mine and friend of his, both professional photographers, and one night they were trying to decide if they should go exploring the mill. Now, there was security, but not much. And they wanted to take photos of it before everything was gone. Now, they couldn't use
Sure.
flashlights, they couldn't use flash cameras or anything else, but they spent a year going into that mill,
Hmm.
not getting killed because, I mean, the workers there often would fish from inside the buildings, through holes in the floor that you could fish into the falls. The natives,
Oh.
the tribes came from hundreds of miles for the fishing. It's the second largest falls by volume in the US.
Oh, that
And
must be
so,
beautiful.
yeah, and so there was all this, but as they were trying to decide, a big, heavy metal door on a calm night opened,
Hmm.
and it's like, okay, come on in, folks. But they felt like they were being protected by these Pukwudgies and kept safe and free from security,
Hmm.
um, because and by the ghost of the site too, because they all wanted the story told, and they did put out a book on it. I
And
actually
that's
have
what
a
I do
copy.
when I go on my investigations too. When I go on the investigation, I thank the spirit for allowing us into their space. And then I
Yes.
let them know that I'm a writer and I write books and I'm willing to write their story if they want me to tell it.
Okay.
And that's how I get information and evidence because they've given me the opportunity to receive it from them. And if nothing happens that night, then I just say that it's a spirit that didn't want anything said.
I
So
like that. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that makes a lot of
But we have
sense.
we consider it we have our mission statement. Our mission statement is we're there first and foremost for the spirit.
Hmm.
And if the spirit is looking to go into the light because sometimes they don't see that light. I think we've had this conversation too, and you had said that you um, don't feel like there's anybody stuck. And I don't know if they're stuck either, but if they want to go into the light and they can't see it, we want to be able to help them. And if they don't want to, then that's fine too. We just
Hmm.
want the people that live in that home to be able to get along with the spirit that lives there because the spirit was there first.
Right.
And we want the family to understand that. And then we also like to help each other because we're all learning in the growth of what our gifts are. And some of us are further along than others. And
Hmm.
well, you know that energy of a whole bunch of people together when I spoke to you, just that energy, it's amazing what can happen with all that energy going on with a bunch of
Yes.
people that are all sensitive to a certain
Hmm.
degree. So, I mean, I know you do a lot of your stuff on your own, but I'm not as gifted, I said, as other people, and I'm constantly learning from them. And we've seen it. I've seen it in action when we're a bunch of us together, all of us putting pieces of the puzzle together. It's just a very exciting experience.
One of the things I like to talk about and work with in classes, depending on the class, is how that can work. And working with strangers, working with people you know, just how does that energy feel? Because sometimes best friends can't work together very well psychically, um, because it's just like the energy kind of not combats, but just interferes in some way with each
Hmm.
other. I've had that happen at
Paranormal
times.
drama. Paranormal
Y-
drama. We spoke about that at one point.
Yeah.
I never ever thought that I would ever experience it, but there was a group of women that really thought that they were the be all and end all, and
Uh-huh.
really, I think I told you, made my life tough. They were really,
Yeah.
really bad. And after talking about it with other people in the field, they said that it's quite common, paranormal drama, until you find that right group that just
Right.
clicks.
Yeah.
So you just have to prepare yourself for the possibility, or work on your own. And I found a lot of people have said, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm working on my own, and I'm going to hang out with whoever I want to hang out with. If I want to go out with Joe 1 week on an investigation and I want to go out with this paranormal group, I'm going to do it.
Yep.
Because you don't want somebody saying, I've been in this business for 40 years, and, I know what I'm doing. And that person's brand new and they shouldn't be stepping on my toes and thinking that they're better than I am. It's just like, oh my gosh, seriously, we're in this together.
I
Let's work
know.
together.
And
And
learn
that
together.
negative energy, you bring that negative energy, then nothing's going to happen. So you might as well just kick it to the curb and go away, because that's nothing's going to happen if you're going to have that negativity, you know?
Exactly. And I I've reached a point in my life where I don't have to put up with that garbage, and so I don't. And I just leave.
Yeah.
Um, and but what I was talking to about is a little different. It's like sometimes the psychic energy can mesh, and sometimes it doesn't mesh.
It
And
clashes.
yeah, and I had a really good friend that when we first started, she actually did some classes with me and stuff. And at the beginning, it was a little difficult for me to work with her in some ways. Um, but then it just clicked in. It took a little while, and then it clicked, and we magnified each other. And that
Well, that's
happens.
good that you persevered. Then you trudged on to find that
Yeah,
place, because you could have given up and you didn't. So.
right. Um, like I said, she was a good friend even before then. So it wasn't a personal animosity or anything
Oh
like
yeah,
that. It was
it just didn't
just,
work.
yeah. And so that
Yeah,
kind of thing can
it
happen,
was just
but
something that just didn't work.
so often it actually magnifies, and the sum becomes greater than the whole of the individuals, or however you say that,
Mm,
which is what you were talking about. You get a bunch of people with the energy together, and it just um, raises what can be done and experienced
mm,
um, often. And you have to be a little careful of making sure nobody's being um, influenced in a sense. Like, it's so easy for people to say, "Oh, yeah, I remember I had that too," or something else. That's part of why it's so important to write things down. Because false memories can kind of pop up. We think we must, or we start questioning, well, did I have that or not? And it's
mm,
nobody trying to cheat or be dishonest. It's just simply the way the mind works sometimes.
mm.
So I usually record a lot.
That's good that you record. It's
Yeah,
good.
but and I'm very much, I get bored with meters and all the rest of it. I like to talk to dead people, and or
Hmm.
whoever else is around. If it's a non-human being, they're great. Um, and then when they don't want to talk to me anymore, it's like, okay, I can go home now, or go sit and think about what I've been told or experienced.
Hmm.
Um,
Elemental. That's
yeah,
what the word was.
uh,
Elemental and
that's
elemental.
that's the word I use interchangeably with Faye, which is probably not the
Oh, okay.
right way to use it.
Okay, so that you would consider the elemental to be a fae.
I would, but I know there are a lot of people that see them differently. But
Huh.
I try to use words that aren't very descriptive,
Mm-hmm.
so that um, I'm not trying to put a big definition around something. I'm trying to leave it open and instead of boxed.
I see.
Yeah, it's just it helps me to be able to really hear and see them with what they want to tell me instead of what I think I'm
Oh, okay.
supposed to hear or see from
Mm-hmm.
them, and not be judgmental right away or something. It's and for me, I find it works, and I find that they usually at least tolerate me, if not get along with me. And if they don't want me around, then I leave. But um, it's I don't know. I like to be respectful.
And we should be. I
Hmm.
think that we really should be.
Yeah.
I don't like it when there are people out there that are not.
Hmm.
It infuriates me actually.
Yeah. I
Very
won't tolerate it
disrespectful.
in my classes or events that
Mm,
I'm in charge of.
yeah,
Not at all. No.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Now, it's about, we've been going for an hour and 12 minutes. Do you have
Time
anything?
flies. Time
I know.
flies.
Well, it's always so fun to talk to you. Do you have anything that
Thank
we
you.
haven't
Same.
gotten out? Thank you. That you want to make sure
Um,
we get out for people?
sure. If your audience likes all things paranormal, I have two podcasts that I'm the host of. It's one of them's called Eleanor Wagner's Strange and Scary World podcast, out of the
Okay.
Paranormal UK radio network or wherever you get your podcasts. And then my
Now,
live show is called
Eleanor Wagner, Strange, and
Scary World. Eleanor Wagner's Strange and Scary World, out of the Paranormal UK radio network.
I can't spell, out of the UK radio network.
Paranormal UK radio network.
Okay.
And then my YouTube channel is Eleanor Wagner, and we stream my other show from the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network through that one. It's called Eleanor Wagner's Creepin' It Real. Real being REEL, like a reel of film. And on the live show, I have usually have a paranormal team from around the country come on, and I usually ask them to bring three particular investigations that they've gone on that have warranted great evidence, and they'll bring that evidence onto the show, and then we'll share it with the audience and we'll talk about what happened while they were there. So that live show is different from my Strange and Scary World, which is where I interview people like yourself,
Right.
and you talk about what it is that you do and what it is you've experienced, or if somebody's a Bigfoot person, or if somebody's had UFO experiences, ghostly experiences. That's what that show is about.
Okay. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So I can tell people definitely, I think you'll enjoy that show. Um,
Thank you.
yeah. Oh, fantastic. Well, it's really nice to have a chance to chat with somebody like you. And, I love making friends. That's part of why I do all this stuff. But
Me
um,
too.
being able to talk about all this and from different parts of the country. I mean, the US is a big place, and different sections of it have some different understandings of ideas and how things work and what's what. And um, not as much as there used to be, but there are commonalities in the stories and some differences in the stories, and um,
Yes.
it's nice to see all of that. I'm beginning to feel like I'm not
And I'm
making any
always
sense
learning.
anymore. Yes,
No, you do. I'm always learning. I'm always learning, and I'm always listening, and I'm always experiencing. And I think that's also part of the social aspect of meeting other people and working with other people. Just the
exactly,
fact that I'm always learning and
exactly.
growing.
And if we stop or we think that people can't teach us, we probably should get out of the business or the field. I
Hmm.
learn from my students all the time. And
It's amazing what we can learn from each other if we just listen.
yep, yep. And I do believe
So,
that people are more similar than dissimilar for the most part as well. Um,
yeah, I agree with that. Hmm.
mm, so cool. Well, Eleanor, I want to thank you so very much. And we will have you back on again. And
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. And I look forward to hearing about your investigation later this month and what
Yeah, I'm
happens. And
excited. I'll be able to share that with you. Yes.
yeah,
And thank you so much for having me on the show. And thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it.
bye bye, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Oh, yeah, Katie says thank you.